me get that started. Anyway, so let's get back to kind of the start of this thing so I can kind of get my thoughts together. If you're one of those people, like I said, that's out there, you're nurturing people, you're taking care of people, you're taking care of your kids. If you're not taking care of yourself, you're going to have a harder time at being successful with that. I know Deborah Sweet, thank you very much for getting on here and telling me that it's working. And Deborah Sweet's a great person to bring up because this is a life coach that I have actually used in the past, and she's outstanding person. She does a lot of self-empowering seminars and things, and she's herself constantly doing her best at being a better version of herself, right? That means with exercise, that means educating herself, that means getting out in front of people, talking to people, listening to people, and trying to educate herself and be better at what she does. She has a family to take care of, she has a business to run, and she's out there doing these things on a regular basis that are improving. She's improving herself on a regular basis. And like I said, if you're looking at your life, and I have to do this quite often because I'm not in the exact place I'd want to be in my life right now. I really need to focus on me sometimes. I really need to get to the gym. I really need to get my nourish my mind with books and videos and listening to people that are in not necessarily a better space than me, but have reached levels of success that I haven't reached. Super, super important to keep yourself in a circle of people that are doing really well. You need that encouragement. You need all those things. And at times we get so beat down. We work so hard on taking care of everybody else that we just wipe ourselves out, and then we're not able to functionally do a good job taking care of everybody that's around us. I was with I had this dream, and I still have this, that I want to do a lot more public speaking. And I contacted somebody a while back, and if you've listened to my podcast, you've heard the story before. And I'm going to tell a couple other stories that'll kind of resonate with you, hopefully. So I did what, everybody used to always say. I went and found that successful person, and I'm going to go talk to that person, and that person can give me some tips on how I'm going to be better at, if I want to do public speaking and they already do public speaking, then I could go, emulate what he's done and, try to be as good as he has. And so I sat down with this gentleman, and this gentleman was a world-renowned person. He's known by many. He's spoken all over the world. He graduated from Annapolis. He's very sharp. He had a radio show for a long time. So I sit down with him at a Starbucks one day, and I'm kind of picking his brain and telling him kind of what I want to do. And he says, well, Ed, the only problem you have is, you speak okay. You can get up. You're not afraid to get in front of a microphone. That's good. You got to get over that. But he says, the problem with you is you haven't done anything. And I was just shocked by that. That was not the answer I thought I was going to get. I thought I was going to get something to be more encouraging. And the meeting ended relatively quick after that. And I went back and kind of sat in my car, and I guess I pouted for a few minutes. I was just so shocked. I didn't know, how to handle what he just told me. And I left that parking lot kind of, disenchanted, kind of upset, kind of, wow, I never thought of it that way. And a couple things happened over the next couple of days. First of all, I started thinking, well, what does this person know? I know he is a public speaker, but that's not what he does for a living. That's not who he teaches. I started thinking about my large family. As many of you know, I have 8 children and currently have 17 grandchildren, 7 daughters out of the 8, 1 son. I have lived in San Diego my whole life. I've been in executive positions at work. I've done, yes, I've never run a company that's, a $50 million company. However, I raised kids. I kept them in San Diego. I kept a roof over their head. I kept them fed. And I thought, a lot of people can't do that. A lot of people don't do that. So it wasn't the fact that I haven't done anything. It's just that I need to articulate what I've done that can relate to your life. And to be honest with you, I think what I've done relates better to your life than what he's done. He is a father, probably wasn't, there every 5 minutes like I was. My wife and I have, had 5 kids and 4 sports and, run all over the place, just like all of you are doing on a regular basis, and made sure they got up and did their homework. And like I said, kept that roof over their head, took them to the dentist, took them to the doctor, did all these things that you all are doing on a regular basis. And those are all important things. And if we have a problem in our relationship, which we don't, but if we did, we would have a hard time accomplishing what we did, which brings me back to my original point. If you're not in that right relationship, if you're not feeling confident, if you're not feeling like you can do these things, you're going to have a hard time nurturing those people that are around you. And this is why I say, I want you to get selfish today. I want you to just think about yourself for the next 30 minutes or so and find out, what are you doing that is making you the best version of yourself? Are you exercising? That doesn't mean you have to have a gym membership to go 5 times a week, but are you getting out and exercising? Are you meditating? Are you thinking? It doesn't have to be meditation where you sit on the floor for 30 minutes. It just has to be some time for yourself to kind of go through your thoughts, plan out your day, do all those things that are going to help you be a better version of yourself. Are you eating right? Are you nourishing your brain with those books and those, putting good things into your mind? When you become that best version of yourself, you become the best nurturing person you can be. And all those people around you that you're taking care of are going to get a better version of you. And that's what they need. Because I know many of you that are listening here, if you have children and stuff, you just think that it's what you have to do. But there's a lot more to it, as you know. You've got to give your whole self to these individuals on a regular basis so they can be successful. It's funny, we look at our kids, and if our kids fail or if something fails, many of us take that blame on ourselves, and we say, that's my fault. I should have been here. I should have been there when that happened, even if they're adults, it seems like. But what I never really hear people do is, if their kids are successful, if they've done a good job, if they have landed that good job, if they're good parents looking, now, I never hear a parent, especially mothers, say, you see how good a job I did with my kids? They don't do that. What they'll do is they'll tell you that their kids are fantastic and look how good they are at what they do. Now, I'm not telling you to go out and get on Facebook Live like this and go tell everybody what a great parent you are, but give yourself a pat on the back. I see a lot of you giving accolades to your kids when they do something good, and you always give them the credit, which is right at some point, but you've also had something to do with that. If you brought kids into this world and you had to manage, the 90s and the 2000s, and you're managing now with all the stuff that's going on in society, give yourself a pat on the back. Take 5 minutes and appreciate what you've done for your kids and what you've done, and how good they're doing is your responsibility too. If you're going to take blame for what they've done wrong as adults, which is crazy because they're adults and they're going to make their own decisions just like we did, at least take credit for the good things that you did for your kids. You took them to church. You took them to, you made sure their homework was done. You did all these little things. You taught them discipline. You taught them how to clean rooms. You taught them all these things. Take some credit for yourselves. I've had things happen to me in life, and maybe that's a bad boss or a bad job or whatever. And, that's just life. That stuff is just going to happen. I've had stuff happen around me that was devastating to our family, and I had nothing to do with it. Didn't see it coming. Couldn't have stopped it if I wanted to. But we make decisions. We make the best decisions we can in the situation we're in. Thank God I talk to all of my children. I can pick up the phone right now and call any one of my kids and talk to them. And I often get them asking my wife and I for advice as being a parent. And the difference is when we were 30 years old and we were making decisions, we were doing whatever we could for those children, with the information that we had and the times we had and the money and everything we had. At 30 years old, we were making those decisions. Looking back, there's times when I would have done something different, right? But it's only because I have the knowledge that I've learned over 30 plus years of being a parent that I would make that different decision. When they ask me about, their careers or their, what they should do in this situation, I oftentimes put it back on them and say, what advice would you give your kids? I hope that none of you would ever, tell your kids something wrong, right? To give them a bad situation, tell them something that wasn't into their best interest. So I think sometimes we forget that we don't make decisions based on what we would give other people advice to. Sometimes we do stuff, we do stuff personally that we would never advise other people to do. Well, I encourage you to start thinking about that. What would you tell your kids to do in a situation? If you were about to give up, would you let your kids give up? Of course you wouldn't. You'd encourage them to keep trying and finish out a season. Or, if the competition is too stiff, you would encourage them to get better at their craft or better at their sport. And that's what you need to be telling yourself. When we talk about storytelling, every one of you has a story, and I'll probably guess you have two stories, right? You have a story that could make somebody sad, and you have a story that could make somebody very happy. And I've done that before on my podcast, where I've told you two stories of how I grew up versus, they were both how I grew up, but the pieces I took out of that story, positively or negatively. Listen, none of us grew up perfectly. There was situations, like I said, there was things happening in and around you that were going on, and you could choose to take out the positives of that, or you can choose to take out the negatives. And I know all this stuff is just like cliche and it's just redundant, but the reason I bring it up and the reason I'm so passionate about why we really need to look in the mirror every day is because we see people making the same errors over and over and over, making doing things. What's the word? Doing the same thing over and over and over and getting the same results is the definition of insanity. And we do it often, right? I know in this job search that I'm doing right now, I go on LinkedIn, I go on Indeed, and I'm not getting a lot of results. Of course, I keep doing it because it seems like the only option sometimes. I'm not getting myself out there in front of people, which I really need to do. But we tend to take that path of least resistance. I talk about that a lot when I'm training salespeople, that they oftentimes just take the path of least resistance. They take the path that's going to get them a sale quicker, but it might not be the best sale or the right customer even. But they'll take that path because that's the path they think, that they're used to taking. That's the easy path. Sometimes we got to do things a little harder, right? I listen to a lot of motivational speakers, and they talk a lot about getting up very early in the morning and working out. And, you think about if you've ever done it and got up at 4:30 in the morning and went to the gym at 5 and worked out, and how great your day is after that. Now, obviously you're tired for a couple hours, but you do that 3 or 4 or 5 times, not only have you gained a couple hours of your life, in addition to what you normally had, you're also working on yourself and making that better version of yourself. Talk about getting over limitations. I had everybody that's probably listening here, if you're young enough, if you're my age or you're older, you've gotten over so many limitations in your life. You probably, if you took a yellow pad of paper out, it's really concentrated and started writing down, you'd fill up about 4 pages. Every day in our life, we're getting over limitations, right? We have, you'll see these successful people that are, that have gone through the ringer in life, and life, and especially people from other countries that didn't have what we had when we were growing up, and they've come to America and they've made a life for themselves. And you just look at them, you're astonished to look at them. Although, if you really thought about it, you've done a lot of those similar things, and you have the ability to do a lot of those similar things to get over those limitations. I told this story again before. My wife and I had hired a trainer years ago. I just felt like if I was going to go out and do this public speaking, I needed to look better. I needed to be sharper. I needed to, kind of walk the walk. And what happened is I was running the Cali Chamber of Commerce, and someone from Tony Robbins' office came in, and I said, apologize if you've heard this story before. And they offered us like this 4-day thing with Tony Robbins, where you go up to LA and you work with him in a group, and you see the ads all the time. And I don't even know if they were walking on coals, but whatever they were going to do for 4 days, they were going to turn your whole life around, right? And I thought, my wife's never been to anything like this. I've been to something similar, but not that large. And the price was reasonable, I thought, for her and I to go up there for about 4 days. And I came back and told her about it. And she was excited, and she agreed to go. And we got all these things. We had all the plans and everything going on, and I was just getting about ready to pay for it. And I had to go to Walmart one night, get some milk or something. And I'm in Walmart, and I run into this kid, this friend of mine, big moose guy, that is a personal trainer. And he says, Ed, you've never come up to I've invited you up to my place, and you've never come up there. Why don't you come up and, I'll give you a free session, and we can talk about your fitness goals and things like that. And I'm like, yeah, why not? He did ask me a bunch of times, and I just blew it off. And so that week I go up there, I get my gym clothes on. Instead of going to LA Fitness, I go to his place, and we go through a workout, and he sits down, and we start talking about stuff. And I said, started thinking about this. And I came back and I suggested to my wife, instead of going to see Tony Robbins, why don't we go hire Sean, right? Hire Sean Carden, great trainer, by the way. If you need to know his information, please email me, and I'll give you the email at the end of this podcast. So we hired Sean, and we started going to Sean on a regular basis, I think 3 days a week to start off. And we didn't work out together. Kit went on her own, and I went on my own. We had kind of two different goals to take care of. And that year I lost 60 pounds. I looked great. I was fitting in pants that I had, my thin pants that were in my closet still. And it really changed my life. It really made me concentrate more on fitness and what I eat. And we were eating clean, and we were doing all those right things. And this is pre-COVID. And man, it was really life-changing to go through this thing. And I remember one day he had me laying on my stomach, and I had my hands up like there was a stretching exercise. And I was thinking to myself that I could quit right now. I mean, this is not easy, and it'd be really easy to quit. But then I'm thinking, man, then I got to listen to him, because he used to kind of give me a hard time if I was, if he knew I was eating improperly or drinking. And I went ahead and stuck it out. And that was in the beginning. That was probably the first, 2 months I was working with him, and ended up, like I said, losing 60 pounds and winning a 30-day challenge where I lost 19 pounds one month, just cutting out carbs and alcohol and all those things. And it was really life-changing. Now, with all that being said, then at the kind of the end of that training session, those 9 months or whatever I was doing it with him, we had a real tragedy in our life, right? Something that happened around us that we had no control over, and it made us have to shift gears and go into a kind of a different mode. And it was super hard. What we were going through was really difficult. And then COVID came, and then we had another tragedy that was life-changing as well. Not as well, both of them were horrific things that happened. Did not affect us as much on a daily routine, but it still affected everybody in our circle, our family circle, and everybody around us. And then COVID, unfortunately, like many of us, we let COVID kind of get the best of us in that, I had lost my job. I wasn't able to work doing what I was doing. And I couldn't get it, no one was hiring. I couldn't get a real grip on everything that was going on. And I kind of lost that momentum. And I shouldn't have, but I allowed it to happen. And I know this happened to probably most of you, this has happened to too. I just lost that momentum, and I lost my, not my will, but, it seemed like every time you turned around during COVID, there was another wall getting thrown up. And this is just COVID was just really a metaphor for life, right? All of you have gone through something where it just feels like these walls keep getting thrown up, and you're like, God damn, you can't get any traction. You can't keep going. And I know this happens to every one of you that are listening to this. And it could be on a real minor scale, not anything that happened like what happened to us, but it doesn't matter. In your world, it's devastating, right? It's all these walls that get thrown up. Our life has changed so much over the last 2.5 years, and a lot of positives have come out of that. This podcast is one thing that's come out of that. And my daughter just said hello to me here. She was the inspiration for this podcast. Never crossed my mind ever to do something like this. I have almost 100 episodes. I've been doing this about 2 years now. That was a really positive thing. I've met a lot of people. I get a lot of people that contact me and say, "Hey, I listened to your podcast." People I would have never thought were interested. So it was kind of it's kind of crazy. So this is one of those real positive things. I'm back on that track to want to get out and do some public speaking. I know today I sound like I'm mumbling a little bit, like I'm rambling on, but this is, like I said, my first live podcast, and I'm trying to get used to how this thing's going to play out. But anyway, that's just another one of those kind of stories. It's kind of a metaphor for life, and I'm sure that all of you have been through those things where you just get like, you feel like there's just walls being thrown up. I guess at some level, there's a old saying called "misery loves company," and I think this. I don't want to call these things misery, although it was tough getting through them. It was painful, and there was a lot of people around us that had to deal with pain that we had to deal with. But I think that if you understand out there that there's just us normal people out there, I'm not driving, I don't have 6 Ferraris in my driveway, and I don't have, I don't run this $50 billion company, and I'm not on Shark Tank, buying businesses. Just us normal people that makes up more of the world than anybody else. Understand that we're all going through it, right? I remember when I first started this podcast, one of my things was I just wanted to put my arms around people, right? During COVID was so tough. I would forget stuff at the store, I think, just to go back so I could see people, because I'm really an extrovert, and I like being around other people and talking to them, and doing networking and all those things. And it was just gone all of a sudden. It was just really devastating for me personally. And I know a lot of you went through the same stuff. And I think this podcast was really designed and kind of motivated to just let all of you know that we're all going through the same thing, right? Should we all sit and pout? No, we should all encourage each other is what we should do. We should all be saying, "Hey, this can happen." I have this thing with me when I talk to people. A lot of times they tend to tell me things about their life that are very personal, very intimate things about their life. And I know, I kid about it. I said, I know way too much about some people because they feel it's very much a compliment to me that they trust me enough, and they're comfortable enough to tell me things. And, it's not that I know they don't, I can't fix their problem, right? I know that. And that's not what I do, hopefully, when I talk to people. I kind of heard Simon Sinek said this the other day. They just need somebody to sit in the mud with them, right? And that's what I'm here for. I'm just kind of here to sit in the mud with you. If you ever wanted to just talk, you could hit me up on Facebook. You could send me an email at edfranklin.nolimits@gmail.com. I know I kind of threw that in there, and I'll throw it in there again at the end. If you just need someone to sit in the mud and just kind of, listen to you, I will do that. In fact, I've even told Kid I thought about starting a podcast about, if you old enough to know who Dear Abby is, just to say Dear Ed, and just to help people get over this stuff. I'm not here to yell at anybody. I'm not here to say, stop being a baby. I'm here to hug you and say, look, I understand. And as much out of character this is, if you know me, it's really true. I'm just trying to help people get past stuff. Listen, I suffer as much as anybody else in life. That's just life. That's just the world. That's how things goes on. And I know that's just life. It's just a horrible saying, because, but when you start to look at all the greatness in life, I look at people like, I look at my kids, my grandkids, my wife, where I live, San Diego, where I have so many positive things in my life. The negative thing is big, this job deal, but I just feel like we really need to start looking in the mirror in the morning and kind of looking at that positive stuff, right? It's you almost need a mantra to talk to yourself about how much you love yourself, because if you're telling yourself that wrong story in the morning, every morning when you get up, you're looking at yourself and going, "Oh my God, we got to do this again with you." It's devastating to you. What you're telling yourself in your mind is so friggin' important. It's important to tell your friends and your kids, but you got to tell yourself every day, this is what God gave me. This is what, everybody I've met in my life, every single person I've met, I've learned something from them. Everybody's, got good parts to them. I promise you. We need to look for those good parts a lot of times. Sometimes, some people, it's a little harder to find those good parts. But I can tell you, from homeless people to CEOs, everybody that I've met can teach you something. And you know what else I know about all that? Everybody I've met is struggling with something too. I don't care how confident you think somebody is, how great you think, they are. They're struggling with something just like we are. And we all need to be a little bit more sensitive and a little bit more caring. Look what's happened to our world since COVID started, and prior to that in our political world. We are more, I feel like we have more prejudice now than we had 20 years ago. And I don't know how that happened, but the hate speech that, when you watch these political races and the hate they're spewing on each other and the things they bring up and the skeletons in the closet, and it's so damaging to America, and you can see what's coming out from them. It's funny. We rolled the dice a couple times on some different things in the last 10 years, 15 years. Kit and I get a lot about rolling the dice. I was just never one of those people to work at the same job for, 40 years and then retire and fish, whatever, unfortunately die, because that's what a lot of times these people do when they retire. I always wanted to try new things and get out there. And like I said, 2 years ago, when when my daughter suggested I do this podcast, I didn't even know what a podcast. I kind of knew what a podcast was, but I figured it was just guys getting on talking about business mostly. I thought what it was, and I think that I'm getting some messages. I apologize. I got a little sidetracked. Everybody thinks that's a good idea. Well, maybe I'll try that out and see what it is. I didn't really know what a podcast was, so I came back to Poway because we were in New Orleans at the time seeing her, and asked my buddy that was under 30 years old. I think everybody needs an under 30-year-old mentor that has the technological knowledge that I don't have. And I asked him, I said, well, how do I do a podcast? Well, you just do one. He just kind of told me what to do. I think I actually did a podcast with him to start. And I said, well, what if it sucks? He's like, so what? Do another one. There's a lot of podcasts out there that suck. And so we just tried it. We just, I got some equipment. I had already bought some equipment because we were doing a lot of Zoom calls at the time. I have lights and green screens and all that stuff. I figured, let me try it out. And I got some good reaction from it. So I kept doing it. And like I said, I'm almost up to 100 episodes now. On average, every podcast fails. The first 70% of podcasts fail the first 7 months, I think what it was, or 85% something. So I'm in over 2 years, so that's all going good. And it's just one of those things that I wanted to try out. I've had some great business people on here. Friday, I've got another good business person on. Last week, I had Corey Nichols on. If you haven't seen that, you can go to my YouTube channel or Apple or Spotify and listen to those. And, I'm getting better at it. I hope my deliveries, I don't feel super excited about today. And I will do more live ones just because I was not as organized as I probably should have been. And I'm never really organized when I do a podcast. I'm usually winging it. But I just think that I wanted to make sure it was an organic podcast, like it was from the heart. There was no planned out things. I know if I do a speech in front of people, if I read something, it's terrible. It just doesn't come out good. So I usually give myself 5 or 6 words and just kind of, start reeling off of those. The reason for that is in the morning when I wake up, kind of depends on how I feel. I've got to sometimes rev myself up, look in the mirror and go, well, this is what God gave you. This is what you need to, use today. Um, Normally what I notice is that I'm not 36 anymore, which is okay in somewhere. I still feel 36. I was at the gym this week. I felt great. So I just think that every day you get a little bit different, a little bit different ed. So I got off track a little bit. So your self-talk, what you're doing every day, telling yourself is super important. And I listen a lot. I studied culture a lot in companies. And I recently spoke with a company that has a very good culture. And I know that culture because I have a history with this company. And I was telling the people at the company that I hope they don't take it for granted how well this company operates culturally, because most companies don't. And I continue to read about leadership, and I hear people talking about leadership and what you need to do and this and that. Unfortunately, when you really start getting to companies and you start breaking down things, they're just talking, right? There's really no action. And this is the danger that we all have to deal with too. We listen to people. I post something positive every day on Facebook, and I hope it resonates with people. And I do get a lot of comments that will say, man, I really needed that today. And that's why I keep doing it, because you never know who needs something that day. So my point to the business metaphor there is that we're all taking in that information on a regular basis, and we need to let that information stick. We'll look at it. We'll go, yeah, I needed that. And 5 minutes later, we're mad because we're driving, or something happened and we're like, not me again. That whole thing, or that wall comes up and you're like, oh, man, I don't want to climb another. So we need to make sure on a regular basis that we're putting that good stuff into our mind, right? And we're listening to it. We're thinking about it. Just listen to it for 2 minutes. Just listen to yourself for 2 minutes. Think about that, that positive thing. I know what you guys are going through, because I'm just a normal guy too, and I know you're going through it too. And I hope that this podcast and my other podcast, you can go through a lot of them and just kind of maybe pull something out that's going to help you out. I would love for you to do that, and just kind of, if I can put some positive, life into your day, then I'm totally successful. That's all I'm really trying to do. This is all born out of me, right? Out of the problems that I've had in my life, where I had to look at positive things and get over stuff, right? I've been married 3 times. I'm going to tell you a story in a second about our first date with my current wife. And it wasn't because, and I did a podcast on divorce. It wasn't because I was so dumb and I was so young and it was all those things. We just didn't understand the expectations of marriage is really what it was. I have my 6 beautiful kids from my 2 marriages, and Kit's got her 2 kids from her marriage prior to us. And it's all these positive things that came out of it. So just know that if something's going on in your life that isn't perfect, it's probably going to resonate into something good if you allow it to resonate into something good. You can't force things. So let me tell you a quick story, get off the topic here. This is funny. So on Sunday, we were at church, my wife and I in Carson. And Kit says to me, she leans over to me, she says, happy 24th. And I'm like, 24th what? We just had our wedding anniversary last month. And I know, because it's February 21st. I mean, I'm not one of those guys that forgets our wedding anniversary. And I said, oh, I said, what is this? Because we dated, that was the anniversary of our date. She says, yes, that's exactly why. She goes, it was 3/19, 1999, at 7:05. And I said, and I started laughing. I'm like, are you seriously going to bring that up? So what had happened on our first date, we went to, I went to pick her up, and she lived in this condo, like apartment. I think they were condos, and there's a ton of them, right? So she had tried to give me the direction, and typical guy, I said, never mind, I don't need, I'll Google it, whatever. This is back when Google just came out. And she says, and so I got lost and in the condo complex and didn't get there till So 7:05. So that's when our dating history started, was 7:05. But for all you women, I know you're all laughing out there. I brought her 2 dozen roses that night, and she said, "Okay, you're forgiven." So I know you gals and guys aren't huge on this about remembering all those little details, but I'm glad it was on March 19th, 24 years ago. I just, it doesn't resonate with me every time. And oddly enough, she brought it up. And I don't know, does anybody, women ever bring stuff up like that? I don't know. So anyway, it was super cute. And we got a good laugh at it at church. But, so 3/19/99 at 7:05 instead of 7 o'clock because I was late. By the way, I had brought her flowers before that too at lunch, just so gets a couple points. But anyway, so that was funny. So these are these beautiful things in my life that I don't focus on enough when those walls come up, right? So I want to talk about another thing. When I hired that trainer, and this comes up a lot, and I had this conversation with somebody um, the other day, and I can't remember who I had it with, but when I was training with Sean one day, he was having some relationship problems with his girlfriend. And during our training session, he was telling me about these relationship problems. And after about 15 minutes of that, I said, we need to train me, right? I'm paying you, train me, not listen to your problems. And we had this conversation. I said, you really need to compartmentalize your thoughts, right? So when you're with me, that's my time. That's the time you train me. That's what you're getting paid for. Your girlfriend problems will not go away telling me, and they will not go away just complaining about them all the time. We humans, and it might be more women, I don't know, I'll get the responses after I say this, tend to get a lot of things going on in our mind at once. I feel like I'm able to compartmentalize if I'm having a bad day, I can put that bad day off for a second. If I'm going into a sales call, for instance, and something tragic has happened earlier that morning, I can put that up aside, go in and make my sales call with my positive energy and all those things, and then worry about that when I come out. We probably do this a lot to ourselves where we are thinking about those bad things going into a positive situation, and it's killing our positive situation, right? I had this situation. Somebody told me once, when you come to a function like a networking event, you you look nervous, you look scary, right? I'm a big guy, you know, beard now, didn't have a beard before, but still goatee, kind of look like a biker a little bit, I guess, depending on how I dress. I would definitely put off an aura of uh, I guess an intimidating aura, and I wouldn't be smiling. So I had to really be conscious of that when I went into a public arena, like a networking event or something like that, that I had a smile on my face because I was definitely unapproachable. And I never, that's not my right on, that's not the person I want to be. I want to be that person that people will approach. And as I was running the chamber, I always had to be that upbeat guy, right? I always had to be the one that's going to get everybody pumped up and make them understand that this was a good decision to come to this event, so they'll come to the next one. We have to watch what we do sometimes, our body language. We have to watch what we say sometimes. We have to, I'm not saying to try to be somebody else. I'm just trying to say we need to find those positive things and that light and put that light out instead of that negative thing. And back to the original thought here, we need to put that positive light out to yourself as well. Kit almost hits me if I'm close enough if I say something negative, and I do the same thing to her. And we do that out of love for each other, right? I say, look, no negative talk. We're not in the best shape of our lives right now. And we're not, and again, we're not 35, but that's no excuse. We're working on that. We're starting to getting our head wrapped around the eating better and get all those things. And the working out, we actually put some equipment in the house so we can do some core work and things like that. So we're making an effort to get those things done. And like I said, we're putting positive stuff into our mind. When you're a parent, you have people watching you, right? They're going to mirror what you do. And we still have 2 kids at home, grandkids, but they're still watching us on how things that we do, how we eat, things we do. You know, they want to eat ice cream all the time, obviously. Well, you can't have ice cream all the time. It would be good though to have ice cream all the time, right? Especially if it wouldn't hurt you. Um, so we still have to do that. There's no better compliment than when our kids tell us that they uh, they give us compliments on our relationship when we were growing up. And that's super, you know, this is just one of these blessings in our lives, in my life and her life, that we have just hit it off, and we kind of get, as far as we're concerned, we have that formula that works for us. And I know a lot of people like that out there. And that's awesome. That's such a huge thing, because there's so many people struggling in bad relationships. And those are a lot of times the people that are having a hard time being good nurturers, right? They're spending all their energy on everybody else, and there's no energy, there's no time for themselves left. You've got to flip that thing around. You've got to put that energy into yourself first, so you have the wherewithal to do what you need to do with those people that you're nurturing. Listen, you can hire all the business coaches, the trainers you want, and everything you want. If you don't have, if you are not accepting that stuff, if you're not at your top of your game, you can't accept that information and you can't use it later. A business coach, a life coach, a trainer, they're going to teach you life skills. They're going to teach you they're going to teach you, all these skills that you can use in your life and business and just in general. But if you're not listening and if you're not absorbing that information, it's going to be worthless, right? Since Deborah Sweet's on here, I'll brag about her again. She, at some level, and it's probably because of me, ended up kind of being a psychiatrist in a little bit. She had to draw some things out of me that I didn't really understand. Sorry about that. I had to hydrate there. That I didn't really understand were holding me back. That were, almost to a level of tearing up at some point, where I had to go, whoa, I didn't really think about that. But she's good at her craft. So she was able to draw those things out of me and kind of go, wow, I really need to put that thing behind me, because it's definitely holding me up. And kudos to her, and I appreciate her for doing that. I still have this big, thick, notebook full of things that she told me, and I oftentimes just go back to that and kind of go through those notes. Here's a funny thing. Well, this part's not funny. I was talking to someone the other day that is having a horrific time in life. I'm not going to get into what those things are, but two people that are having a very tough time right now dealing with some things, and they're closer to my age, right? Things that just came out of the blue, things that happened around them, things that maybe they weren't paying attention. I don't know. Doesn't matter what. But this is my advice for you younger people, that problems never end, right? There's always going to be something. Like I said, it might not be you. It could be someone doing something to you. It could be something that's happening around you. But it's never going to get. I guess it'll get easier, because you're going to get better at handling these situations. But I'm just telling you, life just deals stuff to you, right? Look at, like I said, with the economy and the politics over the last 10 years, look what's happened. That we thought we were behind, that was all behind us, and now it's kind of rearing its ugly head again. A lot of things. We have wars going on in other parts of the world. You would think, as smart as we are now and as intelligent as we should be, we could figure out how to get along, but obviously we can't do that. So it's just, a lot of these things are just cyclical. They're going to come back around. But the way to help yourself with that is to prepare yourself and be a better version of yourself, so you can deal with those situations, right? The healthier your brain is, the healthier you are, the healthier of situation you create, your circle of people, the easier it's going to be to deal with all these things. Don't think it's going to go away when you're 25. Once you're married and you have 4 kids and whatever your thing is, that it's going to stop. It doesn't stop. In fact, the more you get into life, the more involved you get into, the more things are going to happen. I had a friend of mine that said to us that she wasn't going to be one of those parents to stop parenting at 18 years old. And I said, well, I don't remember that box that I could have checked that box when I had kids. You never stop being a parent. I don't care how old your kids are. I have a daughter that's going to be 37 this year. I hope I'm still parenting her. I hope she still lets me parent her, I should say. And that she appreciates my input. And it's not always good input. It's not always the right input for her, but it is some more input, right? It's that my kids deal with, you know, in mother-in-laws and father-in-laws and son-in-laws and excuse me, sister-in-laws and brother-in-laws. They deal with all that stuff. And, that's stuff. I don't necessarily deal with that anymore because I'm a little older, but they're right in the middle of all that. And they have to manage all these things while raising kids, while having a job, while trying to be the best version of themselves. So anyway, it sounds to me like I'm getting a little long-winded on some things that I'm kind of getting redundant. I don't want to do that to you. I promise you on my next live feed, I'll advertise it earlier and I will be better planned out. How's that? There's my goal for the next time I do one of these live podcasts. I think it actually, thinking back, I think that this went pretty well. Like I said, I could have been a little bit more organized in my thoughts. I guess sometimes I'm trying to say things differently so you don't get bored. I just feel like all these things are so important. They're so key to your foundation. Once that foundation is built, the world is yours, man. You can do anything you want, but you got to get a solid foundation, right? You got to get that relationship right. You got to get your body right, your mind right. You got to get all these things working, all that energy going in the right direction. And once you do that, and unfortunately, you're gonna have to get rid of some people in your life that are dragging you down. I don't mean get rid of them. I stopped hanging out with them. I don't want to be on the next Murdaugh trial. You want to eliminate those people out of your life, and let them go bring somebody else down. So listen, this is the No Limits podcast. You can find me on Apple and Spotify and where else? All over. Wherever you listen to your podcast, you can find me. If you go to my YouTube channel, you can subscribe to this. I don't know how I'm going to get this one on my YouTube channel, but I'll figure it out. And the next time I'll figure out how to record it at the same time. So this is, like I said, it's my first one. You can reach me at edfranklin.nolimits@gmail.com. If you just need someone to sit in the mud with you, send me an email. We can talk via email. We can talk via messenger. You can text me. We can talk live, whatever you want to do. You can be on my podcast. If you have guests, if you'd like to be a guest on my podcast, or you have somebody that would be an awesome guest, that's really the key to my growth is these, guests that are super popular. We don't talk about religion. We don't talk about politics unless I brought up as much politics as we talk about. Basically, I brought up that I hate politics. But I can't thank you enough for listening to my channels. I see that people are listening. I don't know who's listening. I think this went okay. I would have liked to see some different things, but it's my first one. And I really appreciate you guys being on. So anyway, thank you so much for the people that listened and the people that made comments, and I got some love here. So if I hope to see you soon. Again, edfranklin.nolimits podcast, edfranklin.nolimits@gmail.com. And I don't know how to stop this, but I'll figure it out. So thank you very much. I'll talk to you all soon.